It's Monday and time for the Back to Business podcast, featuring Calgary's industry leaders. Welcome today's show host, Kim Hayden.
What if the key isn't just the work you do, but the people you surround yourself with? Today on Back to Business Calgary, we interview Cory Fehr of Integrity Insitu. And we're going to go through his journey of the who, what, how, and why the Calgary Petroleum Club is part of his business strategy. But first, our land acknowledgement. We here at the Calgary Petroleum Club, in a spirit of reconciliation, honor and acknowledge that the land on which we learn, work, and live is Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. This place is a traditional homeland for the First Nations and Métis peoples, and today we all are part of this treaty land. Cory, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you took time because I know you're super busy. You're like on a huge trajectory and got lots going on. And for you to kind of take a moment and come into studio and share not only who you are, what you do, but how you've gotten there. I think this is really important information that we share forward. For those that don't know you yet, can you give us a little bit of insight as to who is Cory and what do you do?
Certainly. Well, my name is Cory Fehr. I've been living in Calgary since the mid-'80s, originally from a small farming community in northern Saskatchewan called Melfort. Proud to call that my hometown. Most of our relatives are here or past, but we were there last summer actually visiting some relatives for the first time in a long time. Anyway, I grew up in an entrepreneurial home, very entrepreneurial home, and saw motivational posters and heard motivational tapes as we drove from point A to point B for years. So I had that mindset instilled in me from a pretty early age. I was a big fan of Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties. Remember Michael J. Fox's character? I don't know why, but I started wearing a tie to school in like grade 4. I'm not kidding you. It was ridiculous. But it's because of this character. And anyway, I thought that was kind of the bee's knees. So that started pretty early for whatever reason. And
well, Alex P. Keaton started early too.
Yeah.
Success just breeds success,
I guess I thought if he could do it, I could do it. So I tried, and here we are. Don't know if I did it the same way he did.
You got a tie?
I still, I don't wear one as often as I maybe should, but you get used to it sometimes. But it's been a while since I put a tie on. I told my wife this morning I haven't had a tie on since my last trip to Houston, and it takes a little bit of getting used to again. But it's all good. You look good, you feel good.
Yeah. It's almost like putting that armor on. It's like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I'm here.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit around Insitu and what, where you're at, how it came to be.
Certainly. So we have a team of 16 professionals, mostly in Calgary. We've got one geomechanics engineer in Mexico, and we've got an R&D manager who's in Houston. But the reason that we're here and how we came to be is that over the first 15 years of my time in the patch, it's been about 25 years now, I worked on rigs. I worked at Core Labs, literally started folding cardboard boxes. Started at the bottom of the totem pole. And that led to slabbing core that went in the boxes, which led to analyzing the core, which led to running the lab that was analyzing the core. And then eventually got into geology and reservoir engineering, got into coal bed methane, worked in the field, worked in the lab, did a lot of analysis, wrote a lot of gas in place reports for clients in Calgary. Eventually ended up in the oil sands, a bunch more time in the field and supervising field operations with the assistance of all the different vendors that are out there doing all the heavy lifting on behalf of the operator. I was the company man, essentially, working with those vendors. But this led to a lot of very eye-opening experiences. And when it came to caprock integrity investigation and research for getting your maximum operating pressure established for the regulatory applications involved in building a SAGD project, that's when I started learning about geomechanics, which is rock strength and stress. And that affects everything subsurface. It's not necessarily a household term. certainly more commonly discussed over the past 20 years than previously. But when it comes to how we understand and collect that data, it's a very intensive process, labor intensive, schedule intensive, capital intensive. And as a client of that process, I found it incredibly frustrating to have to accept those things. And when I find something that doesn't quite feel right, I refuse to accept it. And anyway, I spoke to a lot of experts about how to get around some of these problems. And between folks from the civil engineering world, petroleum engineering world, I had an idea, got it validated in my own heart, and quit my job, put together a patent business plan, rounded up some funds back in 2013 to build a device that would essentially take the lab process downhole when it came to measuring rock strength and stress conditions. The stress measurements have always been downhole, but this incorporated into one device, one run type of thing.
Yeah.
So I built a technology with some folks in the UK. The University of Cambridge was involved in that first project on the analysis software side of things. And the market had completely collapsed by the time I was ready to come to market. So the timing was not great in some ways, but at the same time, when the market is contracting, everything else slows down.
But efficiency, when the market's contracting, then efficiency is even more important for all these companies, right? Because if the market's contracting, every single penny counts.
Yeah.
Every minute counts. Every human, investment counts.
1,000,000%.
Yeah, and would you say in a nutshell, that's really kind of looking at, that's how you looked at it, is more, there has to be a more efficient way of operations, and that's what you've gone and patent.
It's absolutely part of the conversation with clients, increasing those efficiencies. Nowadays, everybody's contracting and they're merging, and this is all changing right before our eyes over the past couple of years specifically. But when oil was $30 for 6-7 years straight, it was just dire straits, stay alive.
Yep.
90% of the oil sands operators in Calgary disappeared.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly difficult to stay alive as a company. I was completely alone, working by myself for a very long time.
The entrepreneur. Yeah.
And a lot of suffering, essentially. When folks want to talk about advice and things like this, resolve to suffer comes up, because it's very real. But long story short, we survived the downturn and then COVID and whatnot. And during that kind of time in the desert, figuratively, it became a little literal, because Saudi Aramco reached out to me during that time, 2017, to be specific, and wanted access to that tool that we had built.
Brilliant.
So that was a lifesaver.
Yeah.
But that technology wasn't meant for deep operations, high pressure, high temperatures, meant for shallow wells, because I'd been targeting the oil sands most recently at that point, and that was my
So was it back to the drawing board so you could make some modifications and adapt?
It was back to the drawing board. It was hiring our own internal team of engineers. Everything had been farmed out at first, which was a big mistake.
It's also, though, how most startups work.
Right.
Most startups, because you can't afford to bring an engineer on at $140,000 a year, or $250,000, whatever that number is. Mm-hmm. So you have to part and parcel. So it's duct tape and praying for a lot of startups, no matter what the field is.
Right, and you don't necessarily know what you need.
Exactly.
This is R&D.
A lot of times, that's the number one issue for startups. Is they overplan, overbuild, and then you realize that there was maybe time wasted, time spent on stuff that is not. Okay, now I want to backtrack a little. And I want to take this to those of you who are sitting out there, like myself, who don't work in the oil sands or the oil industry. What you do in the efficiency and what you have put your patent on and built, how does that affect Bob and Susie, who are just general public, that have no idea of what's going on in and around them environmentally? How does that impact?
General public, that's a good question. So geomechanics is a very boutique facet on the overall 950 face gemstone that is the energy industry. And the general public would never think about rock strength or stress.
What is block strength and stress? Just break that down.
Rock strength.
Okay, so not a block, folks. Rock.
Right.
Sorry. Take me through that, because I think that is where it impacts the everyday person.
Right. If you've ever driven through a tunnel, if you've ever been on a sea train and gone through a tunnel,
Yes.
the civil engineers who designed that tunnel had to understand the strength of the rock to cut it out, but also the stress conditions that are going to side load that tunnel and collapse it, or try to. And this happens when you drill an oil and gas well, because it's a tunnel. It's vertical.
Absolutely.
That eventually goes horizontal a lot of times nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's the same principle. You need to understand the strength of the rock and the stress conditions. So whether it's a foundation on a skyscraper, geomechanics is used to understand the limits of the strength that the foundation needs to be able to withstand or exert.
And we see bridges, right?
Right.
So obviously there's a huge evolution from 1960 to today, because
Certainly.
we are seeing issues, and that's where I guess rethinking the problem. That's basically what you've done, right? Is you've gone in and you've rethought how the approach to it.
Right. The way to acquire the data is really painstaking and very, very expensive, and takes 6 to 9 months to get answers out of a lab. And these issues deter operators from collecting what is absolutely critical information to understanding how to drill, how to frack, how to maintain a well bore, and keep your casing in one piece so that you don't lose the well. CO2 sequestration involves caprock integrity, the same way that a steam chamber needs to have a lid on the pot of that
Yes.
steam chamber. That's caprock integrity. It's the layer of rock above the pressurized zone or the injection zone to make sure that what you're dealing with stays there. So CO2 sequestration is something that everybody is hearing about in some avenue these days. And it is an actual legislative mandated requirement that that stress and strength data of the rock above the injection zone is well understood. So the way the public understands it, they want to know that they're going to be kept safe.
Absolutely. I think that's always been the challenge with getting pipelines through, getting new spaces, getting access to new markets. It hasn't, I know that there will be hardcore people out there that tomorrow would shut off every piece of petroleum,
Sure.
right? But the reality is that you're not going to find a surgical suite without petroleum-based products in it. So it's literally going to be one of the last natural resources we would ever phase out, because it's such a fundamental to our day-to-day life, be it through transportation, building, through even just, the base kind of movement of your solar panels, and everything has some form of petroleum in it. And finding the efficiencies to ensure safety and preserve as much natural around, I think, answers a lot of their concerns.
Certainly.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And the other aspect that the public is always looking at when it comes to what geomechanics is doing to their life is induced seismicity. If you live in central Alberta, you're not expecting an earthquake. And when it happens, and it does happen, it's not damaging property, but it's still concerning. So the regulator gets a call, and they have a system in place, a 3-tier light system to classify how serious it is and what are we going to do about it. But these induced seismic events are increasing in frequency, increasing in magnitude, and they are due to oil and gas activity more often than not in areas where you wouldn't typically see seismic activity. So understanding why it's happening, collecting the baseline data to manage that operation in a way such that you will not induce slippage on a fault due to overpressuring and changing the stress regime is going to become more and more important. It'll be more of a political hot button. That's for sure.
And with the advancement of new technologies and new applications, it's the information intake is, I believe, and I may be wrong, but the ability to gather information and do deeper dives or I guess disseminations within the information is becoming more accessible to us because of the shifts within large language models and research foundations and like even Grok, like being able to run huge, massive equations through Grok really helps bring that time in. It's not going to replace because you still need the human element in order to ensure that it's correlates, right?
Certainly.
Right. I love all the advancements that we're having. I personally am I love anything that helps me be more efficient at what I do. And I think this could have actually been spurred by the Alex P. Keaton, spurred by the parents, because entrepreneurs, if you don't find ways to be more efficient, you burn out.
Sure.
Right? What were some of the ways that you found? First of all, tell us, why do you think this is important? Why is it important to you that you basically, because we all know that as entrepreneurs, as startup founders, that this is your life.
Mm-hmm.
You may have, kids, a partner, 3 dogs, and love to bake on the weekends. But at the end of the day, it's every day, all day. This is what's in your head. You're processing. You're working through the challenges. You're, listening to things that will help you find new markets or new contacts. Why is this important to you personally?
The overall concept, or you mean
the overall
the
overall concept, the efficiency within what you're building and going to the levels of actually getting the patent,
right.
Actually creating the solution.
Right. So it is important to me because when I started working in the oil and gas, in the oil sands aspect, the sector of oil and gas, there was a caprock failure that was quite catastrophic. This was in 2006. It was in northern Alberta, and luckily it was in the middle of nowhere, so nobody was killed. But it was a catastrophic failure that saw a steam chamber breach the caprock and explode to surface, literally creating a hole the size of a football field, launching trees through the air like missiles. And you can imagine, and there's a lot of photos available online. These are the types of things that, as an outdoorsman and somebody who is out camping with their family, you're not thinking about these things happening while you're out there, but you don't want to see these things happen to the environment, of course. And my family wasn't necessarily part of the patch. So when you have conversations about what you do and why and things like this, folks don't necessarily have a perspective, but they certainly understand the Exxon Valdez and Macondo and the environmental impacts that we can and we do have. So minimizing that is always in the back of your mind a little bit. But the overall issues that led to that catastrophic failure, I thought were preventable. And there's a lot of brilliant people behind all these processes. And this isn't to poo-poo any of the knowledge and efforts that went into making sure this was managed properly. But there's aspects to these things that happen that generally involve a lack of knowledge, simply because there's a lack of data.
Exactly.
People will figure it out if you give them the data. And that case in particular wasn't necessarily due to a lack of data, but having been with the G&G teams trying to wrap their heads around certain problems and the operational engineering that comes of those understandings, you see what is and what isn't out there. And when you think about why don't we have the data? Why do we spend $3 million drilling a well, but we don't spend X number of hundreds of thousands gathering the data that's going to make sure the well is safe and produces for 20 years to make money?
Yeah, because my understanding is only 2 out of every 10 holes they drill actually produce, or something like that. It's a lot of moving parts just to even find oil. And then I guess maybe it's looking at the safety and integrity is almost like another layer on top of this arduous process of just finding the oil. Or is that getting better too because of technology?
No, the things have changed a lot as far as, the whole wildcatting side of things, because in Canada, especially in Alberta, we've got the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin, and it's extremely well understood. But in the past 15, 20 years, people are now chasing unconventionals. Why is that? And you are getting back into a wildcatting phase to an extent.
Yeah.
But unconventionals by nature are basically those 8 out of 10 wells that don't want to work.
Yeah.
So we've had to figure out how to make them work, and that's why we have horizontal drilling. That's why we have fracking.
Ah.
It's not because we wanted to do those things. It's because we had to, because the low-hanging fruit of a conventional oil and gas play, and you're seeing the same thing happen in Saudi Arabia right now.
Yes, yes.
This is the crown jewel of the world's petroleum supply.
Yeah, light crude, right?
They're chasing unconventionals now. Why? Because they want to go frack and drill horizontals at deeper depths and higher pressures and higher temperatures than ever before? No, because they have to. And the world needs the energy, obviously, and that's not going to change. As you were saying earlier, the feedstock for 80% of the products that we touch every day involves hydrocarbons. And that's just the way that is.
And that really drove home for me. My daughter had a major, major operation when she was 17. I mean, we're talking 3 specialized surgeons. There was 13 doctors in the surgical suite. And when I stood there and I started looking at what is, for sanitary and single use and all of these things within these surgical spaces, even the stents, all of these different things, they all have a feedstock base. And I really wish people would take a look at that and understand. Now, here in Canada, we're, I think, poised really well when it comes to heavy crude, because heavy crude, my understanding, I could be wrong, but actually is the most conducive to feedstock. It uses less energy to create the feedstock that's necessary for everything from, the insulation around wiring so our phones don't blow up on us, the plastics that secure products within the surgical suites, the film on a solar panel, right? So when we look at all these pieces, the wind turbines, right? They all have a petroleum-based product in order to keep the mechanisms moving forward, right? So and that's my understanding, that Canada has a really good natural resource for contributing to feedstock globally for those products.
And that's 100% correct.
See, I got something. I might not have had block and rock, but, I knew there was a chain in there somewhere. But yeah, no, I'm really proud of where Canada's stepping forward now, where I think we've been very conservative, which has led industries and companies like yours to step forward and say, we need to create solutions. Mm-hmm. But then it puts you on the leader globally to say, we can do this better, we can do it more efficiently, and we can do it safer. Let's talk about, I want to go back to what you spoke about around the having the contractors when you first start. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of the challenges to get you to this point, because as I said, I get it. I do not know a startup that is in a technical space that started out with their own engineers.
Sure. So
what were some of the things you learned along the way for your to get to where you're at, to where you say, not the best, but it got you down the road enough to move you forward into the phase where you have everybody internally? Sure. Let's start off with your origin there of the bumps.
Okay. Well, finding contractors and location. Sourcing something out to a third party, like you said, very natural in the early days. You don't have the wherewithal to create an internal team, and you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't have advisors aboard saying, this is what this is and this is why, I'm the kind of person that needs an explanation. And that works for me sometimes, and it works against me at other times. That's life. We all have our hangups and difficulties, and I'm pretty stubborn. I'm an Aries. And people can't tell me what to do and expect me to ask how high. When they say jump, I need to know why. Why am I doing what you just told me to do? So without having detailed conversations around certain decisions, you go ahead and you make the decision you feel is best at the time, and it's not going to be the best one all the time. That's just a fact. And that's okay. That's normal. That's how you learn. You have to fail before you will figure out why it didn't work and how to improve it next time. But a really simple outcome of that failure, it wasn't a total failure. We got that tool built, but part of the group involved in that work was in the UK.
Yeah.
I had to travel to the UK every time I needed to physically check on the project and put hands on equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And that was one mistake for sure. If you are going to third party the work, do it locally if you can.
If you can,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Didn't have too much of a challenge on the paperwork side of things. Budgets were great, and at that time, because it's R&D, there's not necessarily a great way to come up with a number beyond take what you think it'll cost and triple it.
Yes.
And when it comes to a schedule, take what you think the calendar is going to look like and times that by, at least double, if not 3 times. Other aspects of kind of the bumps along the way, understanding governance and having the right partners from the get-go.
That's got to be a big one. I'm very familiar with the real estate space and development in that. And I know the governance is huge. It's
Sure.
so much red tape to get through. What were some of the things that you did in order to get through governance? Because that is like when you look at, and I was actually just curious around the getting the patent and all of that. I know a lot of people have great ideas, but it's just so overwhelming the amount of red tape they have to go to. Could you expand on that just a little bit? Like what were some of your methodology or some of the things that you pulled upon in order to get to where you are today?
Certainly. In my former life, let's call it, I did obtain the PMP designation as a project management professional. So I had a pretty strong grasp on what these processes could and should look like. Depending on the project and the size of the project and whatnot, you'll bring in more tools and processes than others. But recognizing how to create a scope and getting people to understand the scope and sign off on it, that helps get a lot of questions answered up front. And with R&D, there's always going to be questions that you simply don't know to ask or that you cannot answer at first, and you'll have to figure out the hard way. But the other red tape that comes along with anything was a lot of conversations. I would knock on doors all day and I would phone people. I would get on LinkedIn and cold call nonstop and get advice from people who had done it before and talk to different lawyers, talk to different patent firms. I once had a conversation basically interviewing a legal firm to talk about the patent process, and then they sent me a bill for $800. And I said, hey, guess what? I didn't ever say I was paying you for this conversation, and we spoke for 30 minutes, so what gives? And they were not happy. But these are the things that people will attempt if they think they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And you just have to fight for your right to party, essentially, and do what is best for you when it comes to what your company is trying to accomplish. So I'm sure there's some bridges that were, I wouldn't say burned, but maybe a little scorched up by the time some of those processes played out.
I think that's the way it is for every entrepreneur. Like I am watching someone right now build a ESG based looking at prefabricated and factory built solutions to everything from seniors facilities to residence inns to even housing. And, you know, I'm curious on your journey. They say that when you have a startup, you've got it's like the hockey stick, right? You go along, and, you know, sometimes that hockey stick is a little warped on the handle from one too many hits.
Sure.
But then you hit that curve upwards, and based on everybody I've interviewed and, you know, going to different events, you know, the mom and dad entrepreneurs, right? That I am through and through that, you know, Zig Ziglar's playing and, you know, you're just going at it. It seems that timeline is a 3-year timeline. Typically, it's an average. Would you say that you fell within that timeline, or was it extended because you were dealing with the development of something very, you know, technical, right? It's a piece of machinery that's very, or because it is within the technical field, and you had to get the patents and everything. Did you go beyond the 3 years getting set up, or? Like, what did your journey look like? Was it the hockey stick, or are we still on the stick?
That's a very good question, Kim. There's been multiple hockey sticks, multiple shafts, multiple heel of the blade, multiple toes of the blade.
Excellent.
Those are the parts of a hockey stick, right?
Yeah.
And when the company started in 2013, the first 6 months were spent on the business plan, on the patent generation, and raising money. The following 2 and a bit years were spent developing the technology. So by mid-2016, we had run that first tool. So that would be a 3-year span, just under 3 years, which is exactly what you just said. But at the end of that 3rd year, the market had completely collapsed.
Yep.
So now what? You got to throw away that stick and pick up a lacrosse stick.
Yeah.
And now you've got something else and you have to pivot. Everybody talks about pivoting.
Yeah.
And luckily for me and Integrity Insitu, that was when Aramco reached out and said, we want that technology. So that enabled the pivot to occur with confidence, and for, a big grant that Alberta Innovates had available to be landed, because now Aramco's involved and everybody knows who Aramco is.
Yes.
And when they come to you, you're onto something. So luckily that enabled the pivot, and then the stick becomes a different thing. And it was the original technology that we were building upon, but it was now a high temperature, high pressure version, completely different animal, rated for 20,000 PSI, which is literally a 13-kilometer long head of water, 13-kilometer deep hole full of water. Drilling mud is heavier than water, but you're still talking about the ability to withstand a 9-kilometer head of drilling mud.
Yeah.
Like that'll get you places.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the temperatures that we can withstand get you into 97% of the wells on the planet. And the pressures that we can exert are above and beyond anyone, including the big 4 technology developers in the oil and gas space, have ever done. And we ran that, and we built that tool over about a 3-year engineering period, and another year to assemble and bench test. And we ran it successfully in a shallow well in 2022, made some modifications, and we ran it about 2 weeks ago successfully in a, air quotes, deep well, about 1.5 kilometers deep in Oklahoma.
Wow.
So we're now unraveling all that data, because we're sending 6.5 pages of data to the surface every second, which is one of the differentiators of this technology, is we're measuring rock strength and stress conditions in situ versus a disturbed core, because people would typically take a piece of rock out of the ground and send it to a lab and wait 6 to 9 months for those strength values to come back. We do it in situ in real time. And we're sending 6.5 pages of data to surface every second that tool is turned on. So the amount of data is on the scale such that you can train an AI model.
Yes.
This has never before been possible with this type of geomechanical data set. That acquisition process has never, ever been anything close to what it is now with this device.
You've talked a lot about networking. How has your experience, how has your engagement here at CPC, at the Cal Pete Club, at Calgary Petroleum Club, whatever name we want to give it, how has your experience here, like what are some of the things that you've engaged with? Have you, meeting people here, speaking to people here, leveraging the facilities, having meetings here? What does that do for you, for your confidence, for the people who are coming to meet you and such?
It's been a huge boon, and the environment obviously is a very professional one. People are here for the same reason, and that is to do business. You're not wondering what they're thinking. You know what they're thinking because they came to meet you here, and they come here, or they've been here, etc. And it's a very easy way to focus the conversation. And when you can focus, with focus comes confidence, and with confidence comes execution. And you can then have a much more properly executed discussion around what that person, the client, needs or wants or is interested in, compared to going to it blindly. The Petroleum Club is common ground for a lot of professionals in Calgary in the energy space.
Yeah.
And
that's all energy. What's fascinating is how we're starting to see multiple verticals, like we'll see wind, we'll see, we have somebody here that's doing hydrogen. So it's like we're starting to see the attraction of like minds, and these are solution creators.
Certainly. Yeah, the like-mindedness is a big aspect of getting the job done. To do it justice, I want to go back to your last question when I was talking about getting over that fear and whatnot. A huge part of getting around these challenges is your support network at home. And my wife is an entrepreneur and grew up in an entrepreneurial household as well, and has been nothing short of 110% guaranteed supportive of everything I've ever needed to do in the past 12 years. And we have been so broke, and I have spent so much time away from home. And I got 4 boys.
Oh, wow.
One is out on his own now, but my wife is running her business and taking care of our 3 younger ones, and now 2 dogs as well. So 5 kids at home, essentially, with as much or as little support as I can physically provide at all times. But if you don't have somebody in your corner, fixing those mouse, what would they be called when you get hit in the eye and you've got a big mouse swelling up, closing your eye and you're bleeding? If you don't have that in your corner, you're screwed. So you either got to do this as a solo everything, or you only do it with the right person in your corner. So anyway, my wife has totally been my rock. And
give her a quick shout out. What you said, she's an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Give her a shout out. Let's plug her.
Fair Real Estate, as well as Caviar Pearl. She makes pearl jewelry and had been doing that for about 15 years before I met her. And then when we started having kids, that all changed, obviously, and she went to consignment. She had a store downtown for a long time and did very well. But she's always been very interested in real estate as a hobby. And then a friend of hers encouraged her to get involved on a professional level. So she did, and she's been crushing it. And she's incredibly charismatic, very hard worker. We're often side by side on the couch till 10 at night, most nights, her doing her thing and me doing mine. Very hardworking and incredibly capable. Just I've seen how a lot of those things work in the real estate world through her.
Yeah.
And the way she executes and her command of the industry and all of the governance that's involved with a lot of rules in real estate, as you said. She is an expert. So anyway, I have no problem recommending her to anybody at any time.
I hope so.
Whether we're online or not. Yeah.
And on that note, folks, I definitely think that I think the sum of this story is basically, birds of a feather. Surround yourself with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
If you are on this earth or in this city and you are deemed to make a difference, to step outside of the lines and color a different story and create a new product that can save lives, that can create efficiency and assist large-scale economies that trickle right down into our backyards. Do it. And just make sure you got the sphere around you.
Certainly. Yeah, it helps.
Thank you, Cory.
Well, thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you for joining us today on the Back to Business podcast. Be sure to visit calpeteclub.com, CALPETECLUB.com, to find out more about upcoming events, networking opportunities, and membership. If you are not already a valued member at the CPC, where we are proudly connecting and supporting Calgary's business leaders.